بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم لك الحمد كما ينبغي لجلال وجهك وعظيم سلطانك ونصلي ونسلم على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. My dear brothers and sisters, it's my pleasure to welcome you to another episode. This is the final in this series of the grand legal maxims, Al-Qawaid al-Khams al-Kubra. We have been discussing the various legal maxims, and we continue today the second part of our discussion on the last of the grand maxims, Al-Ada Muhakkama. Today we continue to explain some more details about this qaida, its applications, and the limitations, examples for the applications, and some of the subsidiary rules. And with this, we conclude this series. Later on, we may resume another series on the other Al-Qawaid al-Kulliya, other legal maxims. That's another time, inshallah. So let us study this. When it comes to urf or ada, it's used to rule on practices in Islam, in the fiqh. Urf and ada is used to rule on practices of individuals or societies in regards to issues that are not explicitly mandated by Sharia. As for those that are clearly mandated by Sharia, urf and ada cannot be applied because Sharia comes to abrogate them, to cancel them, because they are destructive. They do not contribute to human welfare, felicity in this world and the next world. As for those that are not contradicted, where there is no clear mandate from the Sharia, that is the area where urf and ada can be considered and the rulings can be made accordingly. Urf and ada can restrict the application of textiles also. To qualify it, to restrict it, or to enforce some restrictions so that the purpose is to facilitate ease in the application of the laws and make life smooth, because there are different circumstances that we as human beings face, and the Sharia comes to bring ease for us. Yuridullahu bikumul yusr. God wants ease for you. He doesn't want to impose hardship on you and make life difficult. Urf can be either verbal or practical. It can apply to words that we use, to which we have given some meaning, which may be different from the linguistic meaning. Or urf can be practical, related to practices. Okay, verbal urf refers to usage of a word or group of words which may be different from its linguistic meaning, or even its meaning in the Quran and the Sunnah, because there are words used in the Quran in a certain meaning, but the urf comes and gives another meaning to it, in which case, of course, we need to take into account the meaning of that word. The urf has given to that the new shade of meaning. An example for this word that has been used in the Quran in one sense, but the urf uses it in a slightly different sense, qualifying it or restricting it, is the word lahm. The word lahm means meat. In the Quran, the word applies to meat of animals that we are allowed to eat. It can also apply to fish we catch from the sea or lake. But when it comes to urf may exclude fish from it. So in a country, when they use lahm, They mean only the meat of the animals that are slaughtered, not fish. So therefore, because of this change in meaning, the application of the connotation of the word lahm, if someone was to that he would never eat meat, his oath is not broken if he were to eat fish. If in that country, in the usage, lahm means doesn't include fish, the oath is not. Another word in the Quran is walad. It includes both sons and daughters, but Urf may use it exclusively for sons, male children. And therefore, if somebody sets aside something for his walad, then of course it doesn't include daughters. So strictly it is for the son. Practical urf applies only to universal or widely acceptable practices in a community. An example of practical urf is the practice of dividing mahar, which is the bridal gift that the husband ought to give his wife. It's mandated by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran. So but there is a practice of dividing it into two types, two installments. One installment is payable at the time of contract, and another deferred, payable later at the time of divorce or death. So urf, yes, this is acceptable. Urf can either be universal, applicable to all Muslim countries, or just applicable locally to a specific country or region. An example of a universally applicable urf is aqdus salam. This is a type of sale in which the price is paid while the delivery of the good is postponed. This was practiced in Medina, and the Prophet ﷺ, when he migrated to Medina, he allowed it to make life easy, although it goes against the prohibition of sale of goods that is non-existent at the time of contract. Okay, but an exception is made, and that is aqdus salam. This urf is universal to all Muslim countries where they allow this kind of, sale. Example of a local urf is the practice of bearing. Some countries, when you have that first child, the practice that the feast of Aqiqah is the cost of it is borne by the maternal grandfather. This is practiced in some countries. So of course it can, in that country it's applicable, but it is not so in other countries. Another example, there is an urf of traders, for example, that if somebody buys something from them, the seller, those who sell that product, they bear the cost of the delivery of the goods. So if that is the urf, and that urf is binding on the people who engage in that specific country, but it's not applicable to another country where the practice is that the one who purchases must bear the cost of the delivery. Urf can operate in multiple ways within the legal theory. For example, the first example is urf can qualify a general text. For example, the maintenance of a divorcee, a woman who is divorced, and she's spending time in iddah, of course, it is upon the husband to maintain. He owes to her maintenance. Now, the amount of this maintenance is not specified in the Quran. Look at the verse in Surah At-Talaq. لِيُنْفِقْ ذُو سَعَةٍ مِّنْ سَعَتِهِ وَمَنْ قُدِرَ عَلَيْهِ رِزْقُهُ فَلْيُنْفِقْ مِمَّا آتَاهُ اللَّهُ لَا يُكَلِّفُ اللَّهُ نَفْسًا إِلَّا مَا آتَاهَا سَيَجْعَلُ اللَّهُ بَعْدَ عُسْرٍ يُسْرًا. The wealthy shall spend according to his means, and he whose resources are restricted shall spend according to what God has given him. God never burdens a soul beyond what he has given it. God will bring ease after hardship. So the verse mentioned does not specify the amount of maintenance. Instead, it leaves it to the custom to determine. Another, this custom determines the intended meaning where the word may have different linguistic connotations. We have already given the example, the two examples. Lahm in the Quran used for to include all kinds of meat, including fish, and walad in the Quran used for offspring, male and female, but the urf comes and restricted. In the case of lahm, some countries, lahm means just, it doesn't include fish. And walad just include only male children. Another example is custom determines the term of the menstrual cycle. You know, when in doubt, refers to her custom. Or also Imam Shafi, he made a istiqra, a research about how many days usually women menstruate. But of course, this is not applicable now, where scientific knowledge of menstruation is far advanced. So there is no need for us to make this guesswork. Of course, we may have specific information, what kind of blood is considered, menstruation, and when it is not considered. Of course, in that case, we have to go by the scientific determination. Otherwise, custom can determine that. Or for custom, however, cannot contradict principles established categorically by the text. For example, if the urf in some countries and cultures is to disinherit females, so that no inheritance is given to females, this has been the custom in many countries. Even in Arabia, when Islam came to declare that women have a right to inheritance. Women have the right to own property and things like that. But if the urf in one country is, in culture is to disinherit females, it has no validity in the Sharia, and that urf is not taken into account, because no one can take away the rights that Allah has ordained. The same applies to customs. Some countries, and there is the corrupt practice of enforcing dowry due on the woman's family, that when a boy comes to a marriage, they ask how much dowry they will give this boy. And of course, big. And because of this, because such a obscene amount they demand, many women cannot get married. And oftentimes it also leads to all kinds of harm and abuse of women, because they fail to produce that dowry. Islam prohibits that dowry, which is demanded by the husband from the woman, and forces the dower, the bridal gift, which is mahr, which should be given by the boy to the girl he is marrying. So this corrupt practice of dowry, cannot be enforced in Sharia. Now, I will finish by mentioning a few subsidiary rules. There are others. There is no need for us to go into all these details, and this will give us a picture of what this al-ada muhakkama means. Number one is istimalun nasi hujjah. Usage of people is a valid proof. For instance, if A asks B to help him in making a deal, and he helped A to make that deal, and it went through, then the B has a right to demand a payment for his service if the custom dictates it. If it is the custom in a particular milieu or culture, that anyone who makes a person, for instance, real estate, you ask somebody to help him get that deal, the real estate agent had a right to that payment, if that is the custom. Another example, if A hires B to work for a day, and okay, you will work for a day or 2 or 3, 4 days. The time and the work hours are determined by reference to custom. So if he has worked 8 hours, A cannot say, I hired you to work one full day, and the full day is 12 hours or 24 hours. No, it is determined left to the custom. Again, another waqf of mushafs, books and educational materials is valid based on custom, although initially the waqf is something that is lasting. So an exception now, custom comes, and yes, you can make a waqf of books or masahif, educational materials, computers, devices. You can make it a waqf, even though these things can perish. They cannot last long. Number 2, another rule is original meaning of word can be waived in favor of the universal custom against it. For example, if someone knows that he will not eat from a particular tree, although the original meaning is the tree, the metaphorically it means it refers only to the fruit from that tree. So even though the original meaning is cancelled by the usage, the metaphorically, if this statement means that the fruit from that tree. Likewise, someone was never to put his feet in someone's house. It includes if he lands, if he comes there with a helicopter and he is sitting in the helicopter inside the house, he did not put his feet inside, still, he has entered the house, even though he didn't put his feet inside. And another rule is writing is as valid as oral expression. For instance, if A writes to B, I sell such and such house or property with specifics, and B confirmed the purchase in writing, transaction is complete even though they did not express it verbally. No verbal articulation is made. If it is everything done in writing and concluded in writing, is as valid as an ijab and qabul. Now, another rule, what is known by custom is akin to a contractual obligation. In other words, al-ma'rufu urfan kal-mashruti shartan. That is the phrasing of it. So what is known by custom is akin to a contractual obligation. In other words, what is recognized by people in the transactions is considered as binding contracts unless they made an exclusion. If A purchased a merchandise in a country by certain currency from B, B cannot demand payment in another currency. So if it is in India, he has a right to demand rupees. He cannot say, you pay me in Canadian dollars, unless at the time of contract, that was the agreed upon. If a father gave his daughter a gift, jahaz, at the time of marriage, while sending her away to husband's house, gave her furniture or whatever, a computer or car, and the later father comes, it was given as a loan. Simply, it is not a gift. The dispute must be settled by reference to the custom. How the custom, what is the custom in that specific milieu, specific culture? If it is given as a gift, usually, then that custom rules and the father has no right to demand. Finally, rules can change according to circumstances. تغير الفتية بتغير الزمان والمكان. For instance, initially paying for religious services was considered undesirable or haram. But the custom now, because these services are available and it's often, these services cannot be rendered unless the payments are made because they have to make a living. So paying for religious services of imams, muezzins, teachers of the Quran, marriage officials is allowed by custom. It's the custom has made it, rendered it permissible, and that is okay. The Prophet ﷺ initially prohibited writing down traditions because there was a fear of people mixing them up, hadith with the Quran. However, after his death, there is no such fear, so the custom sanctioned it. After the death of the Prophet, they started writing down the traditions, and in this way, hadith was preserved. So, inshallah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us to enhance our understanding, bless us in our understanding and practice of this beautiful religion. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive me if I have made any mistakes in my presentation. I will read this dua kafarat al-majlis. I will also request everyone, inshallah, to make you share this beneficial knowledge, because by doing so, you will stand to gain rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Thereby, we will join the caravan, the links of the transmission of Islamic knowledge going back to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because ballighu anni walau ayah, transmit this knowledge from me, even if it is one ayah or one tradition that you can pass on. And inshallah, with this we conclude this series, and we may come back with the second part, another part, dealing with al-qawaid al-kulliyah, and we will announce the time later on, inshallah. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. Glory and praise be to you, Allah. We bear witness there is no God but you. We ask forgiveness of you and return to you in repentance. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.